Okay, well, this is a little bit of the wrong flavor of equipment to be on here, but this is what we're working on today. Old Massey 750, and we're here for some engine parts. If I can, here, hang on a second. So this is a 372 Perkins, and near as I've been able to gather, pretty much all it is a 354 with a bigger bore. Sounds like they shared the same stroke, a lot of the same internal parts. However, that being said, this motor is going to do me no good for parts for the white, at least for guts, because upon doing some research for like the crank, for instance, between a 372 and a 354, there are over 50 different part numbers for cranks alone. The rod's not going to do me any good because the Turbocharger rods are drilled for oil to the wrist pin, and cooling jets for the piston crowns and all that stuff. So basically, there's no sense in pulling this entire engine because it ain't gonna do me a bit of good. However, I can use the starter, which I do believe, I don't think that starter's, I think that starter's either a newer replacement or it's not that old, because or it's been rebuilt at some point, because that starter's in really good shape. So I'm gonna rob that starter, gonna rob the fuel filter base, gonna take the injection pump, the injection lines, and the injectors. The injection pump and the injectors are actually slightly, the injectors are basically the same, I just need to change the tips. The pump, the guts are a little different. It'll physically bolt on a 354 and it'll run it, but I guess the governor and timing advance is a little bit different, and whatnot. That being said, this can be rebuilt to 354 spec, so I could either have it rebuilt to a 354 pump and throw it on a shelf for a spare, or it'll be good if I find a shop that got a good rebuilt core sitting on the shelf, and I could turn that in for a core or something like that. So I'm stealing the injection pump, and I'm going to steal the alternator on the other side, because it's got a good double groove pulley on it. The alternator's probably junk, and I don't think it's right for the tractor anyway, but I need that double groove pulley. So all this being said, I'm getting all this stuff for free, basically, as long as since I'm taking it off. And with that being said, this almost throws the Perkins back on the table, because when I was figuring on overhauling the Perkins, you got about $1,300 to $1,400 in a rebuild or in an overhaul kit for it. I can't remember if that was with or without bearings. Pretty sure it was with bearings. Pretty sure that was a major overhaul kit, or what they called the deluxe overhaul kit from Reliance, which I trust Reliance. They make decent engine kits. But then I was probably looking at between $700 to $1,000 for new injectors, because the injectors that are in that motor, I don't even know if there's any usable parts left on them. They're so rusted and so just, they're not in good shape. I don't even know if they could reuse anything if they overhauled them. So I was looking at probably somewhere between $700 to $1,000 for new injectors, and then probably between, because the turbo on it is junk, if I had it rebuilt, probably the only thing that they could reuse would be the center section, maybe. But I threw a ratchet on it to try to break it loose, and with a 12-inch ratchet, I quit trying to break it loose because I was scared I was going to just twist the nut off. So I don't even think the turbo that I got on that thing is rebuildable. So to buy a new turbo, I was probably looking at another $800 to $1,000 plus the turbo elbow. Well, if I'm getting these injectors for free and all I gotta do is put new tips in them, which tips are probably somewhere between 30 and 50 bucks, so that's not that bad. And then if I could find a good takeoff turbo and elbow, preferably a turbo elbow and manifold, the whole 9 yards, to bolt right on that engine, that's not going to cost an arm and a leg. All of a sudden, with the money I'm saving in parts doing it this way, the Perkins, or overhauling the Perkins, becomes cheaper than putting a Cummins in it. So, we'll see how things play out, but I was getting these parts anyway because, if nothing else, the injectors, if I put new tips on them, I have a spare set of injectors if I need them. And basically it's spare parts, because that starter should fit the 7300, the 8700, or that 2105. And if nothing else, we're good for spare parts. But this possibly throws the Perkins back on the table for discussion. So I'm gonna grab some tools, and we'll probably start. I'll get the starter off first, and then close this front hatch, and we'll do the rest from the top, because there's a hatch right there and then a hatch back toward the grain tank, so you could actually just stand behind the motor and work on everything. It's actually not that bad of a combine, at least motor wise, to work on. But anyway, get some tools and we'll get that starter off and go from there. Okay, so a little bit of a correction. It's not a terrible combine to work on. That being said, the jackass that thought that all they needed for the front here was these 2 steps on the feeder house rather than a platform in front of the engine like Deere and everybody, and not White and everybody else did, is fucking stupid. I would much rather have a platform. These starters. But like I say, this is a 372, and the only thing, or the only company that used it, was Massey Ferguson. And the only thing it went in was combines. Didn't go in anything else. And it'll bolt right in where a 354 goes. However, from the information I've been able to gather, they pretty much are only good for a combine motor. It sounds like for just about anything else, they are just atrocious. I don't know necessarily what the deal is or why that is, but just the information I've been able to gather on it, that's what I came up with. So, like I say, there was really no point in trying to pull the whole motor. But since we're talking about the White, it's kind of scary how many people were just okay with either just trying to get it unstuck without even pulling the head, or B, pulling the head, getting it unstuck, running a hone down through the cylinder, and then just slapping it back together. Not even re-ringing it or nothing, because if the inside of the cylinders are as bad as they appear from what I could see looking through the injection hole, you can guarantee that the rings are at the very least going to be stuck. And if there's as much corrosion as what there appears, they are probably severely deteriorated or possibly, well, severely deteriorated, weakened, possibly broke. But if there's that much corrosion on the pistons and down in the ring grooves, even if they are still okay, if you got it broke loose without cleaning up the rings, freeing them up, getting the ring grooves cleaned out, there's a very good possibility you could start breaking rings. This is if you could even get the motor unstuck enough to run, but it's not going to run because the injectors are screwed. The tips are literally rusted off the injectors. The injectors physically will not spray fuel. So at the very least, if you got it unstuck, you have to put a set of injectors in it to even know if it's going to run. And then you got the guys that were just said pull the head and get it unstuck and hone the cylinders, and all you're going to be out's the head gasket. Put it back together and run it. Well, okay, that's okay if it's just going to be like a trailer pansy show queen collector tractor, going to spend most of his time sitting in the barn or putting around at showgrounds. Not a user. First off, yeah, you can hone the cylinder, but the rings are wore to match the cylinder walls now, so you're going to recross hatch them and try to reuse the original rings. So the rings are going to have to, provided they're strong enough, wear in again. So you're going to be using oil. You can figure that right off the bat. And how you going to hone down to the bottom of the sleeve where the cylinder is going to be sitting, or where the piston's going to be sitting at the bottom? You can only hone to the top of the piston, but you're going to have another 2 inches of cylinder, or 2 inches of sleeve past that still need honed that you can't get to without pulling the piston. And naturally, the guys that are giving me this advice are saying, I've been working on diesel since Columbus came over on the boat, or I've been working on a diesel so long that I helped Rudolph put the first one together in Germany. Well, that's fine, but that may be how you work on things, but that is not how I'm going to work on things, because when I get that tractor done, I want to be able to jump in it, turn the key, and know that it's going to go without any issues. And it's going to be the last time that I have to work on it to that extent, barring any major, I mean, there's always a chance for it all shit. But I just want to know that when I'm done with it, she's good to go, and I don't have to worry about it every time I turn the key. I want a usable tractor, not a hand grenade. So if I do it, I'm going to do it right. It's going to get pulled down. It's going to get new sleeves, new pistons, new rings, new bearings. Because if you're there and you get it, you might as well put bearings in it. At the very least, it's going to get a valve grind, because you can figure that if it got water in the cylinders, and that's the other thing. Everybody was saying that, oh, it's usually just one cylinder. Well, apparently they missed the part where I found water in 2 cylinders already. And I haven't even made it to the front 3 yet. So yeah, long story short, I ain't just gonna take an engine that has been sitting full of water, get it unstuck and run it. Not for a user. Not on a turbocharged diesel. Now, if you're working on something like a D11 Cat or a big EMD and locomotive that's a modular built engine, and it has individual cylinders and all that stuff, and it is made to be rebuilt component by component rather than all at one time, because you're looking at, you know, $10,000 to $20,000 a hole to overhaul that engine. Yeah, that's one thing. That's what those engines are built to do. Is if you have a piston go bad or you score a liner or something, they're made to be replaced one at a time. But this is a damn 6-cylinder that's got a $1,300 overhaul kit, and it gets you everything. Why wouldn't you just put the overhaul kit in it and be done with it and know you're good? That's just being a cheap ass.
And I brought that up to one guy. He said, no, it's just being smart. No, it's being a cheap ass. It's $1,300 to overhaul the engine, and you know it's good. Why wouldn't you just spend the $1,300 to know it's good? This is where that platform would be nice. Sweet. Okay, there's the starter. Okay, now for the injectors. I do not know if any of the lines, the return line will work, and this line will work. I don't know about any of the actual injector lines themselves, but we're here, we're going to take them anyway. Oh, come on off of there, you bastard. Hopefully these injectors come out without a fight. That would be good. What are you doing, Teeter? She's not gonna be able to see me. Teeter, where you at? Yep, she can't see me. Teeter! Up here. What are you doing? She's exploring. Be careful not to lose the crush washers, because those are important. It would appear there's already one missing there. Really, I just need to save a few. I actually accidentally, unless it was never there to begin with. I think I lost, well, I know I lost one, or it was never, like I say, it was never there when I had the return lines off the 105. Oop, well, there went one. I kind of like, see it, that's right there. Like on the 7300, this return line, they've got banjo fittings, and then there's little pieces of hose in between. Yeah, lost another one. Shit, oh, there it is. Caught the spider web. Which they, I mean, they work, but they're always a little damp. So I like the thought of this one-piece return line, because you eliminate that rubber. But on the other hand, it's kind of a pain to take on and off because you got to try to balance these washers underneath this thing, and it's a big solid piece of tube. So yeah, you'll have that. Okay. Teeter, where you at? And hopefully these injectors come out without a fight. They're a lot better covered on this combine than they were on that tractor, so hopefully that kept. Well, it's a lot harder for water to get in this engine because the exhaust is down and then back up, so unless water can defy gravity, oh, and I know I was talking at one point about getting an engine out of a combine. Well, this is not actually the combine that I initially thought. This showed up, or this offer popped up like a day or two later. Ironically, naturally, I get another Perkins, and all of a sudden I got Perkins parts coming out the wazoo. But the other combine, I think I found out it's a 750 as well, so it's going to have a 372 in it, so it ain't going to do me a bit of good anyway. But it sounds like to get a 354 turbo, you have to have a 760, is what it, near as I can tell, was the combine, the Massey combine that used a 354 turbo, and then obviously an 8900 white, or an 8920 white would use a 354 turbo. But upon further investigation, with all the shit that you have to change between motors to make a combine motor fit in that tractor, you're better off just to overhaul the Perkins that's in it, because you got to change the oil pan, you got to change the crank, you got to change the valve cover, you got to change the timing cover, you got to change the accessory drive, you got to change manifolds. So at that point, it's like, well, do I try to swap all these parts over onto a motor that may or may not be wore out? Because obviously, unless you get find the combine that's running and you pull the engine yourself, you're just gonna have to take the person's word for it that it was a good engine. Or do you just spend the money and overhaul the motor that's in it and be done with it? Teeter, I hear you. Where you at? Okay, now the question is, how nice are they going to be to me? Oh, come on. This slide hammer tool isn't exactly the best because I built this for Bosch injectors and they're different. These I'm pretty sure are cabs. Yeah, these are cab injectors. Oh, it's gonna be difficult. God dang it. About the one beef I have with Perkins engines is their insistence on using fine thread fasteners for everything. Fine thread sucks. Yeah, it's more accurate to torque it, but it's easier and more accurate to get a torque on it, but as far as everything else, fine thread just sucks. It galls easier, it gets stuck easier, just fine thread sucks. Takes forever to get apart because there's twice as many threads. Yeah. Where are you at, you bastard? Oh, that's fun. How the hell do you get to that thing? Okay, I think I got everything loose on the pump. I do believe, as long as she wants to be friendly. Sweet. And that's the one nice, the thing I like that somebody was thinking when Perkins designed these. Well, actually it would have been, I don't know if Cab would have designed this or if this would have been Perkins spec and Cab just built it that way, but they got an interrupted tooth on this sprocket so that it can only go back in the hole one way, so that makes timing that much easier. Okay, there's that. Now I just got to worry about these damn injectors because they're being difficult. Okay, so finally gonna get this video finished up. I can't even remember what day this week or last week I even started taking these parts off this thing. But anyway, obviously got the alternator because I needed this pulley, because I need a double groove pulley. Alternator's obviously shit, and it's a Motorola. Where did I see it? It's a Motorola, which tells you how old it is. I mean, when the hell did Motorola quit making automotive electronics? But the alternator's junk. It's the bearings are out, or, well, probably not bearings, probably bushings. But either way, they're dry and they're growly, and Lord knows if it even charges, but all I wanted was that pulley. And then if nothing else, when I go to get a new alternator, I can turn this one in for a core and save a little cash that way, if there's even a core charge, because sometimes on them, because it's supposed to have an AC Delco on it, and I'd probably get a heavy duty one just in case I wanted to add extra lights. But regardless, sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't a core charge on those AC Delco alternators, but it's nice to have one for a core anyhow. And then the starter, which is in really good shape. Like I said, when I was taking it off, it kind of either looks like it was a newer starter, because I can't believe that when Massey put that thing in the combine that the starter wouldn't have been painted red with the rest of the motor, and it seems like that sticker wouldn't be on there. So I'm wondering if this has either been remanufactured or if it was a new starter at some point. But either way, it's a good Delco starter. So got that. Did manage to get all 6 injectors out, other than being a little crusty on the bottom nut. The injectors are in really good shape. Like I said, I'll just have to buy the 372. Use different tips than a Perkins, but you can buy these. And I would take these things apart, and my buddy Tyler's got a Sonic cleaner we actually used to clean the injectors on a Super 55. He actually cleans injectors and carburetors with it. That's basically what he bought it for, but works really good. So I'd tear these things all apart, run them through a Sonic cleaner, put new tips in them. I mean, you could take them to an injection shop and they'd probably bench test them, but really there's not a whole lot to go wrong with this style of injector. These things are pretty tough. Basically, the only thing that wears out on them is the tip, and I mean, there's a pop-off spring in there that I guess could get weak, but what are the odds? Still better than having to buy a new set of injectors or a new set of cores. There's all the hardware for them. All the injection lines I saved. They're in good shape, and they should. You'd have to hold them up next to each other to see, but they look identical. The only thing that they'd probably be different than the 7300, because that's a non-DOT engine, but they should be the same as the 8700 or the 2105. Then I got the fuel filter base, which I didn't necessarily want for any of my equipment, but that 6.2 Chevy, or that 82 6.2 Chevy I got, has the dumbass dual filter housings that GM put in it, and you got the one buried down in the crotch of the motor that you gotta disassemble half the motor to get to. I wanted to eliminate that, so I thought I could put this on there and use this as a fuel filter base for that thing. I was going to look for a Rusa Master one like what was on like the 1955, the 1950T, but this thing will do just as good, and it's got the pre-cleaner bowls and all that. So that's kind of why I got that, was I was going to try to put it on that pickup and get rid of those factory GM filter housings that kind of suck. And then obviously I got the injection pump. Like I think I said earlier in the video too, I don't remember what all I said when I was tearing the combine apart, but so I'm trying to recap. But the 372, there was some stuff that near as I've been able to tell, I'd probably have to take the build code off of this one and the build code off of the one on the 8700 and the one on the 105 and decipher the build code and figure out exactly what's different. But they're an upright cav rotary pump. I don't think there's a whole lot super major that's different that can't be switched around and build that to a 354 pump. But near as I can tell, there was something different with the hydraulic head in them and something different with the governor in them between a 372 and a 354.
And even though the cubes are bigger, it sounds like at max fuel, the 372 pump still does not deliver as much fuel as a 354 turbo pump. So, but it's a good pump, it's free, it feels good. So either A, I can turn it in for a core and buy a actual correct 354 pump, or B, I can have that one, send that one and have them build it to 354 spec and make it a 354 pump. Either way, good thing to have on hand, because I don't even know what a core would be on an upright calf pump, because the only thing I can think of in the United States that used them is a 354 Perkins or a 372 Perkins. Well, no, I take that back, because I think some of the other, well, no, because the most common 6-cylinder Perkins that Massey would have used in the tractors would be the 354. So I think even as far as like Massey tractors go, they all be on 354s. I think they use these on the 4-cylinders too, but that doesn't do any good on a 6-cylinder. So, but that stuff, and it was free, so kind of hard to argue with that. So anyway, let's walk up here and look at the 105. There's the planter I still got to get cleaned up. Teeter, where you at? The weather around here's been kind of shit all weekend. It rained Saturday, it rained and snowed yesterday, which was Sunday. Sunday I didn't do anything. I slept in till 11 o'clock, which felt great, and then I went out, ran around and paid rent and went grocery shopping, and got back to the house, and the weather got even more shittier, and I sat on the couch and was watching YouTube videos on my phone, and next thing I know I was asleep, and it was 6 o'clock. So I don't think I've got that much sleep in a single day, and well, at least since last winter. And it felt amazing. You don't realize how wore down you're making yourself till you finally get caught up on some real sleep, and then it's like, wow. All right, let me get this here side shield off. What are you doing, Teeter? You saying hi? So, I guess I should have took the one off the other side. Anyway, the last thing that I would need to get for a reasonable amount of money to, sounds like there's a damn helicopter somewhere. Where's it at? That's got to be a helicopter. I hear it, but I don't see it. That's got to be a big helicopter. I don't know if you guys can hear that on the camera, but holy shit. Where are you at? There he is, right there. What is that thing? Well, that was unimpressive. That was just some civilian like news helicopter or something. Possibly a medevac, but either way, I was expecting it to be a lot bigger. It sounded a lot more impressive coming than going. But anyway, so the last thing I would need to find for a reasonable amount of money to bring the Perkins all the way back on the table for discussion is a turbocharger. Because this thing, when I say it's locked up, I mean it is locked up. I was on it. I took the intake hose off and just to see if I could free it up, put a ratchet, a 12-inch ratchet on it in a socket. And I was leaning on it as hard as I could, and I quit because I was scared. I was twisting the impeller shaft, so I didn't want to break it, so I quit. So if I had to guess, if I took that thing into rebuild, the only thing that they could possibly use is the center section. And I bet that they would put brand new compressor housing, exhaust housing, fan, they'd probably replace everything else. So basically, probably the only thing they could use if I took that thing in for a rebuild would be the center section. So I'd probably be looking at somewhere between $700 and $800 to rebuild that turbo, unless they got cheaper, because that's what it was like when we had the one rebuild on my 1955 the second time. But if I was going to put a turbo on this thing, I'd want to get an original one, because it's a Air Research T04. I've got a T04 and the 1950T. That's what originally came on those. And I've got a, what is supposed to be, oh hey, I never tightened that back up. I guess I ought to do that. But on the 1955, when we got it, it had like a cheap ass Chinese turbo. You can go on eBay and buy them for like 150, 200 bucks. They're literally a China turbo. They come in a box that says Turbocharger. There's no tag on them. There's no identification marks on them. There's no casting numbers on them. They're nothing. It's just a turbocharger. It's a universal fits all. They are shit. They are garbage. Like most shit that comes out of China. So we didn't have a factory turbo for the 1955 to overhaul, so we just bought a brand new Garrett for it, which is supposed to, and I can't remember the model number on the Garrett, but it's supposed to be a direct replacement for an Air Research T04. And if I remember right, Garrett actually bought out Air Research, but don't quote me on that. Somebody will probably know. But so I got a comparison. I got the Garrett on the 1955 and the Air Research on the 1950T. Just from what I've seen, the way the two motors act, that Air Research is a lot better turbo than that Garrett. It spools faster. It feels like it pushes more air. I think the Air Research is better turbo, so I would want a good Air Research to put on this thing. I need the turbo elbow, because this thing, where the muffler clamps onto it, is like there's almost nothing left of that neck. So I'd need the elbow, need the charger. Ideally, it'd be nice to get the charger, the elbow, and the whole manifold, and just bolt the whole thing on the side. Obviously, if I got a different charger for it, I'd probably at least have it checked out, unless... I mean, turbochargers are pretty easy to tell they're either out or they're not, because you can feel the play in the impeller shaft. But yeah, so if I could come up with a good charger, elbow, and manifold, at least a good charger and elbow, but I'd prefer to find a whole manifold, because the way this thing, the way the charger and the flange and everything is on this, that's going to be kind of rough just to get this one apart. But if I could get that without an arm and a leg, the Perkins is probably back on the table for an overhaul. So yeah, that being said, my buddy found me it's gone already. It's on Facebook, and I don't have Facebook, so we couldn't send it to me, and it sold already. But he found me a P-Pump 5.9 out of a 92 or 93 Dodge pickup on Facebook down here in South Bend for $1,500, but it was sold already. And in the first two videos, when I was talking about the Cummins, you'd swear to God, everybody thought I just pulled the Cummins out of my ass, because, you know, Cummins, the 5.9 Cummins, whether it's a rotary pump or a P-pump or whatever, the 5.9 Cummins is considered a factory replacement engine for the Whites and the Olivers. They came about in the late 90s, or in the early 90s, when the 100 series came out, because the 100 series used the 5.9, at least the 100, the 120, the 140, the 160, and the 175, and the bigger ones, they all used the 8.3. But when the 5.9 came out in the White Workhorse series,
guys were taking, because for all intents and purposes in the Workhorse series, they mount the exact same way that they have them mounted, or that they made them to mount in the Perkins tub. And you can literally buy off-the-shelf kits. They make them to mount a 5.9 in a white or an Oliver, and the 5.9 is the most common replacement engine in the 1855 and 1955 when the 310 grenades itself. So I did not just pull a 5.9 out of my ass. You can literally buy off-the-shelf kits to drop a 5.9 in an Oliver or a white, because it's considered a factory replacement engine. And don't quote me on this, but I think, at least at the start, AGCO was the one that brought the kit out, and then the aftermarket took over. But anyway, so yeah, I did not just pull that 5.9 out of my ass and say, hey, I want to slap a Cummins in it because it's cool. No, it's because you can buy kits and it's easy to do. And because it's considered a factory replacement engine, like you go, at least in the state of Michigan, at least in the local area polls that I go to, for farm stock, you have to have a factory engine in the tractor. Well, since a Cummins is considered a factory replacement engine, you can put a Cummins in an Oliver or a white, and they can't say anything about it because that is considered a factory replacement. So they can't say, hey, that's not the factory engine, you can't run in farm stock. It's considered a factory replacement engine, so you can run it in farm stock. So there's that. Yeah. So basically, yeah, that's basically what I wanted to explain on that part. Is I did not just pull that Cummins out of my ass and say, hey, I want to drop a Cummins in this thing because it'd be neat. No. And that's also why, because you could buy all the stuff off the shelf to do it, an Oliver or a white is the cheapest thing to drop a Cummins in, because you don't need an adapter plate or anything like that. They make a bell housing that works. They make the brackets that work. I mean, I think the kit itself with the bell housing, the brackets and everything is only like $1,100 or $1,200, and then whatever you end up paying for a motor. So yeah, that's where the Cummins came from. It's not just something that I just randomly came up with. But anyway, right now the Perkins is balancing on what I can come up with for a Charger. So, but it's not anything that's gonna happen right away. If anything, this would be something that gets screwed with next summer, possibly. Next summer I'd really like to work on my barn. So of course, if Brandon in the White House keeps up his shit, might not have any money to do anything next year, so we shall see. But anyway, I'm gonna put the side cover back on here and probably call her a day. Well, I'm not gonna call her a day. I gotta detail my truck and get all the teeter out of it for all the mud and rain we've been having. She got the interior, that thing, a mess. But probably all I'm gonna be doing outside today. So anyhow, I guess that's it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.